Jennifer Chu tends to the Elmhurst Community Garden every weekend.
So these are tomatoes, heirloom tomatoes, and we have chocolate.
She's been living in Elmhurst for more than 30 years.
Some sage, beautiful sage.
This place used to be a vacant lot with weeds and abandoned tires, until residents like Jennifer put tons of efforts into making it a beautiful garden.
Chinese broccoli?
As an active member in the community, Jennifer strives to make her neighborhood a better place.
I love my neighborhood. I think on this particular block, it's very quiet. We have kids playing in the streets. We have front yards and backyards, lots of trees. People take care of their yards. They have flowers. Everyone knows each other. It's great.
But last June, that peace was disturbed. The Pan American Hotel was converted into an emergency homeless shelter, and residents were not happy. The local community was so upset that it took to the streets to protest 3 times in the summer.
We were actually protesting the way the city, DHS, and Mayor de Blasio put the shelter in our location, in our neighborhood, without any community input.
The shelter sits just 1 block away from Jennifer's house. It doesn't allow visitors, nor does it permit non-residents to linger on the pavement. Nearby residents are very concerned with their mysterious new neighbors.
There are about 200 families in there, and we don't know whether if they have criminal backgrounds, if they are pedophiles, if they have mental health issues, if they're substance abusers. We don't know. And the nonprofit that's operating the shelter, they won't tell us. DHS won't tell us. Our local elected officials won't tell us. So that's what we're concerned with, who our neighbors are. If they're going to be our neighbors, we'd like to know who our neighbors are.
The community were not the only group who were unhappy. The homeless families in Pan Am also protested with their own goals against misunderstanding and for better housing. Picture the Homeless. A coalition of homeless or formerly homeless people helped arrange the protest. It assisted Pan Am residents to voice their opinions and try to build a bridge between the homeless and the local community.
We go out in situations like that, and we try to work with the community and getting them to understand what the process is, why those individuals ended up in a homeless hotel, and to put more humanism into the insight of how people view the homeless. They're not, as I said, a bunch of bums who are trying to just milk off of society. These are people who, for various reasons, have found themselves homeless, and some of them, as I said before, work every day.
Concerns and tensions still exist, but locals and homeless also mingle, especially in places like the New Life Fellowship Church. Every Tuesday and Thursday, residents and homeless families come here to get free food and clothes. Many locals donate and volunteer to serve the homeless. Vashti, a leading volunteer, was once in a homeless shelter herself. She especially understands the experience.
It's in here. Don't forget to take it out, all right?
All right.
There are different circumstances that you end up in a shelter. It could be a fire, it could be a storm like Sandy, different circumstances. But the thing about it, nobody asks to go in a shelter. Nobody desires to go in a shelter. Nobody looks, like that's my #1 goal, to go in a shelter. But you have to be in there because there's no choice. You don't want to be on the streets with your kids, so you have to end up going in there.
Homeless people dislike the shelter just like the community does. Caprice, a domestic violence victim and single mom, were moved into Pan Am this summer. She often comes to the church to get her baby Messiah a hot meal. Many single moms like Caprice hold mixed feelings towards their new home.
I want to have a place for him to grow up, but there's still rules and regulations that you have to abide by. It's curfew times, and his grandmother, he wants him to go away with her, but because we're in the shelter, he can't go. And if I was living by myself in my own place, Whereas, you know, once I got out the shelter, he would have been able to see his grandmother.
Although the shelter provides homeless families a place to stay, it is temporary with a limit of 6 months. If Caprice can't find a way out by deadline, she'll end up moving from one shelter to another. Good news is that City has released a new program to subsidize domestic violence victims for regular housing. But it's still experimental, and Caprice doesn't know when her turn will come. Moving into regular housing is not a dream only for the homeless. It is also a goal of the local community.
Families need to be housed in a facility that has a kitchen, has a bedroom. You can't have mother, father, or two kids all sleeping in the same one room. It's really kind of warehousing the homeless people, and that's really awful.
Jennifer is also worried about another battle neighbors have with the city: classroom size. Elmhurst is one of the most overcrowded school districts in the city, and more children brought by Pan Am Shelter won't help the situation.
We're at overcapacity, at maybe 150% overcapacity. If the city wants to help these homeless families and put them in our neighborhood, that's great. And we could help them, sure, but who's gonna help us? If the city wants to put the shelter here, we could get more. The city could also give us more schools, more teachers, more classrooms. No, you can't just keep throwing more kids on us without giving us the resources. That's not right.
While neither the homeless nor the community desire a shelter, more are opening in Queens to cope with the rising homeless population. Pan Am is currently an emergency shelter with a contract till December. The city hasn't reached a decision as to make it permanent or shut it down. But the local community is determined to continue fighting.
Before the city makes its final decision, we want to be included in the decision-making process, and at a minimum. But if the city decides to proceed without our input and making a permanent shelter, then we'll look at some other avenues. Possibilities are filing a lawsuit against the city for not involving us in the process. But we'll continue to fight.